Okay, this lecture is over research. Now, oddly enough, this is one of my favorite subjects. And don't think I'm strange. I've just been burned a lot of times with assumptions and just believing things to be accurate without checking them, and have learned the value, the really true value of effective and quality research, and have since become quite the advocate for proper quality research. Let me highlight this by showing you something. We're going to try a few attempts at, quote, research, which is the standard way in which most people will look up information. If they look it up at all, many times we take what someone says to us for granted. We just assume that because mom or dad or brother or sister or boss or friend makes a statement, we believe it to be true, and then we pass it on to someone else who passes it on to someone else, and so on down the line. While that may be an easy and convenient way to gather information, it is in no way, shape, or form an accurate way to gather information. So let's look at some of these questions right here. Number one, is spanking okay? If you're a parent, you may have considered that question before. Number two, how do I lose weight? How many times have one of us done that before? Put that into a Google search. Stomach pain? You know, you get a leg hurt, you have a funny rash on your hand, and you have to look it up on WebMD because they have all the answers. And a big one, is climate change happening? These are questions, these are things that you can put into Google and get a series of responses with. Let's just try one. Let's do the first one, is spanking okay? So we're going to go to Google, and we're going to literally just type in, as if you had your phone with you, and you pull up Google, or you say, hey Siri, is spanking okay? Let's see what we get. All right. Is It Okay to Spank by parenting.com, an article. Looks like it's probably a scientifically based, or at least a study-based article, where they have surveyed folks. The Biblical Approach to Spanking by Focus on the Family, which I think is a Christian group. Parenting Advice, Is It Really Okay to Spank Your Kids? Your Tango, and it was an article published in the Telegraph, so there is some chance of accuracy there, not guaranteed. The Pope says it's okay to spank children in some cases, CNN. Child Discipline, Is Spanking Ever Okay? By childcare.about.com. Dr. Phil, who could not possibly value from Dr. Phil advice, right? How to include spanking in child discipline. Look at this, with pictures. That's awesome. So this is what I want to highlight. When you do a simple Google search, you find a lot of variety. There are people that are going to say, this is the way it is, and people that are going to say, no, 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 this is the way it is. And all of which have, at least in most cases, decent arguments. So what do you need to do to find out what the right information is? And that's kind of what we're going to look at today. So let's start with an overview of the various types of research. Now there are basically two general types of research. One is primary and the other is secondary. And primary research and secondary research is probably something you've talked about in an English class before. But let me just give you a quick overview of some of your options to use for primary and secondary research. So for primary research, you can use things like fieldwork observations, which means you can make observations and take notes of that. Experiences in your own life might be a factor here. These are not source citations, but they are part of research. Surveys, like the audience analysis survey that you're going to do, that is primary research. Primary meaning you conduct the research and create the results and evaluate them. Secondary research means you get it from someone who did it. You are doing it on your own with primary. You can conduct an interview. I actually think this is a great idea. Let's say you are trying to, advocate weight loss through muscle atonement instead of weight loss through cardio. And you go up to your local gym and you talk to their fitness expert. You get some answers to your questions based on somebody who is immersed in the field, who could be, quote, considered an expert, and use that information to support what you have to say. And that does count as an oral citation as well, one of your 5. So you can use surveys in that way, you can use interviews in that way, and you can use field work observations as part of a discussion, just not as a source. Original artifacts or document examinations. So you go through and find details. I had a student last semester who was doing a should we or should we not hunt. And one of the things I liked about it was that he put up a content analysis of a website where people would go in and just post their comments about their opinions about these things. And he went word by word, sentence by sentence, and deconstructing the sentence and analyzing it for meaning for every response that he pulled up. I thought that was great. That doesn't count as a source citation, but it's a really good way to approach a topic like that. Experiments is another. If you've done an experiment before, or if you've researched an experiment, that wouldn't be considered primary, but it is a part of appropriate research. So these are all types of primary research. You're doing it yourself. Most of you, if you're going to do primary research, you're going to probably stick with the surveys and the interviews. That's your most likely avenue for primary research. Many of you are going to go with the secondary research, which is finding information that someone else gathered. In that case, you have a lot of options. Obviously, internet sources, encyclopedias, books, newspaper and periodical articles, those are all very easily accessible. Our website, for our library has a great deal of sources there, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you just have to be real careful. And we'll talk about how internet sources can be tricky. So you have to be really, really concerned about where you're getting your information and how you relay it to us. So encyclopedias, books, newspapers, stat sources, these are actually really great. Typically, statistical sources can lean in an unbiased manner very easily. They can lean biased as well. But if you go to a research site or like Pew Research or even some governmental census data places, there are really good sources there that might be of value to you. Biographies are excellent. Even if you pick up a kid's biography, I honestly think that's a great idea. If you go to the library and you look in the children's section for biographies of people, you'll get some nice succinct information. And that's good for a speech where you don't have a ton of time to relay details. Quotation books and websites are sometimes okay if they're really applicable. And then government documents, which you can find all over the place. These are all secondary research material. They're ways to find information that somebody else gathered. Now, when you are looking at the sources that you have attained, remember that you are going to go through a quality check. It's worth 10 points how, quote, quality your sources are and how you have delivered them. So when you are looking at, say, a website, check a few things on that website. Who wrote the website? If you are trying to find information, you have to be careful that that information is not extremely biased. You may have some inclinations towards biases or biases that you are unable to identify, but you want to be careful of extreme biases. For example, if you were going to do a speech on how to appropriately feed your dog, and you find this great website that talks about how healthy Purina Pro Plan is compared to every other dog food, and that's what we should feed our dog. You need to be careful that Purina is not the one that either conducted the study or supported it financially or in some other way. And usually you can figure that out pretty easily. And oftentimes the quality or the accuracy of the information can be found really fast by just doing a quick Google search. Here's my 2 suggestions. If you want to make sure what you're finding is as accurate as possible, or is not considered a falsehood, go do a quick Google search to say, is this true? And you may find it that way. But if it's not something that you're trying to check for whether it's true or false, if you're looking for something that's more, is it a validated? Do a lot of people say this? Do the search and find yourself at least 3 to 5 sources that say the same thing. If you can do that, 3 to 5 decent sources that say the same thing, then it's probably a good place to start. So look for authority on the topic. Who has the knowledge? Are they objective? Are they biased about it? You want to be careful there. What is the currency? How recent is this information? I recently did a paper on online education, and when I was doing research for it, I was finding things that were 10, 12, 15, 20 years old that were completely worthless because things have changed so much. I had to narrow it down to the last 3 years to be able to find current information. So you really have to think about it. What is the currency? How recent do you need this information? And a lot of stuff that has to do with science, you need it as recent as possible because science changes so much and in such significant ways. With the more information they find, the more they can support some various ideas. And then relevancy. Make sure that this is a site that is relevant to your topic, supported by people that are experts or very experienced folks in the field. All right, so check those sources. And when you have them, when you've got all 5 or more sources that you feel are really good for your speech, that's when we do a quality check. Are the sources good? And then when you deliver the sources, when you orally cite them, do you do it appropriately? And that's what we're going to look at here in a little bit. So keep that in the back of your mind. Really quick, let's check out SWC's library webpage. I have provided here the username and password for the access to the online library resources when you are out of off of campus. So when you get off of campus, if you need those resources, check them out. And here is the username and password for that. But if you are on campus, it's pretty easy. You click on the library. Right here, you're going to see magazine, journal, and newspaper database. When you click on that, you're going to see a variety of databases here, and there are a couple that are useful. I like EBSCOhost just because it's got strong peer-reviewed academic articles, but Opposing Viewpoints is fantastic for topics like our erudite. So if you click on Opposing Viewpoints, you're going to see what looks kind of like CNN's website. It's very user-friendly. You could even use this to find a topic if you're at a loss. I mean, if you don't really know what you want to do, but you know you're into environmentalism, you can click on View All, and you're going to see all kinds of different categories. I always loved ocean life, marine wildlife. I could click on that, and there's viewpoints on a variety of topics like deep water exploration sonar. There's stuff about sea levels rising that may or may not be unproven. Sea levels threatening coast regions. Opposite points here. So there are academic journals that talk about these things. There are magazines, audio files, news broadcasts, videos, more magazines, additional references and websites, an interactive map. Hello, presentation aid. So there are such fantastic pieces of material here. And even when you get into them, like for example, if you click on global warming will cause sea levels to rise, and as you see, we have opposing viewpoints here. When you click on that, you're going to see the content of the article all the way down through whatever you need. You could also listen to the article if you are not able to sit down. You can get the citation, you can email it to yourself. There's all kinds of great stuff to do here. So Opposing Viewpoints is something I would definitely recommend if you get a chance. So get on the SWC's library website and use those tools. Those are almost universally useful quality sources. So you should have no problem getting a good grade if you go on this library's website and use their sources. Now when you orally cite them, that is another fact, or excuse me, another factor in how quality your sources are. Most cases, the sources need to be laid out for your audience the first time you use them. So you need 5 different sources. That's not 5 different pages on WebMD. That's WebMD, a book by a medical examiner, Art Magazine article, an academic journal, 5 academic journals. I don't care. It doesn't have to be a variety of sources or of source types. It has to be at least 5 different sources. Okay? When you have them, then you're able to do what we call oral citations. And oral citations is telling us who the source is as you state it. If you've been in an English class and you've written a research paper, you know that when you're writing, and let's say you say that WebMD says that 1 in 88 people are diagnosed with autism. You could say, according to WebMD, 1 in 88 people are diagnosed with autism. That's a source citation, or a part of a source citation in an English paper. It's the same thing for a speech. You have to actually say it. You can't just put the citation at the end of a PowerPoint slide or say, hey, I got all this information from WebMD. It doesn't work that way. You need to say the source as you use its information. So, for example, if you were listening to a podcast by a psychologist that says that backlit devices cause sleep deprivation, you could say, John Doe, a professor of psychology at University of Pennsylvania, states that backlit devices cause sleep deprivation. Okay, so you need to tell us who John Doe is. Okay, he's a professor of psychology at Pennsylvania University, and what that person says. I need to see that for all 5 articles. If you have an article, for example, titled Bang for Your Buck, I could say, in an article entitled Bang for Your Buck, Dave Ramsey, a financial advisor, states that. So in that case, you are also telling me who Dave Ramsey is and the title of the article. Or anything else like that. Make sure that in whatever situation you have, that either the article, its source, or the author is explained the first time you use it. Now, if you use John Doe again, you could say, John Doe also states, and you don't have to re-explain that he's a professor of psychology, but I do want you to do it the first time. So I'm looking for the top quality source citations to tell me who the person is, and if you don't have an author, if it's just an article, the name of the article, and the credentials of the person or the host site for the article, or the journal for the article. Whatever it is you chose. So if you found an article and it was just bang for your buck, but it didn't say who the author was, but you found it on Opposing Viewpoints or on EBSCOhost, you could say, in an article retrieved from EBSCOhost entitled Bang for Your Buck, the authors state that. So that's another way to do it. Make sure you cite all these sources effectively. Now, a couple other really good ways to do it, and this is broken down by type of source, are listed here. So you can see in books, you are going to cite the title of the book and the name of its author, and you can also cite the book's publication date or the credentials if you need to, if you're trying to boost credibility, to make sure that people know this is somebody that's got strong credentials in this area. So if you look over here, it says, Thomas Friedman, noted international editor for the New York Times, stated in his book, Hot, Flat, and Crowded. That would be the most common way to cite it. But if you really wanted to give details, you can lay out the dates and all of that as well. Okay? So looking at these, you can see what to do with books, what to do with journal or magazine articles, newspapers, interviews, internet sources, and so on. And these are all available to you in the PDF version of this PowerPoint. So make sure to look at that to reference how to use this. And I'm going to ask you to participate in finding quality sources this week. So make sure you have what you need. And then you lay it out appropriately when you give your speech. So that quality check, it will include those things. It will include the quality of the source itself, and it will include how you actually deliver the source, how you deliver the information. If I don't know who the person was while you're speaking, then I'm not going to be able to give you full points on that. Okay? So these are what we're looking for. Hopefully that helps. Please understand that just because you believe something, it does not mean that it is 100% true. If somebody tells you that there's a fact out there that is 100% accurate, go check it. Make sure they are right. You don't want to go through life with piles and piles of information that is completely inaccurate. If it matters at all to you, check it and make sure you know what you're really saying. One of the worst things in the world is for you to get up there and mouth off, and I'm not just talking about speeches, I mean in regular everyday conversation. One of the worst things you can do is get up there and mouth off all of these things you believe, and then somebody knows something more than you do, and you look like an idiot because they can shoot you down in a matter of seconds. So please, please, please give yourself the credentials you need to host opinions and find out the answers that are based in any values, beliefs, facts that you think are true, and find those answers before you start passing them along or spouting them off to other people. I appreciate your guys' attention and heeding my passion for this week, and I will see you on the discussion board.